Phoenix, Arizona was experiencing one of the worst heat waves in recorded history. The temperature had soared to 118 degrees, 48 degrees, and showed no signs of dropping. The asphalt was so hot it could cook an egg, and the emergency rooms were overflowing with heat-related casualties. Sarah Martinez, a 22-year-old nursing student, sat in her small apartment watching the news with growing concern. The reporter's voice was grave. This is day 7 of the extreme heat wave. Authorities are urging everyone to stay indoors and check on elderly neighbors. Several homeless individuals have already been hospitalized with severe dehydration and heat stroke. Sarah glanced at her air conditioning unit, grateful it was still working. Not everyone was so fortunate. Her heart went out to those who had to endure this deadly heat without shelter. She had always been described by friends and family as having a heart too big for her own good. Even as a child, she would bring home stray animals and share her lunch money with classmates who forgot theirs. Her parents, both healthcare workers, had instilled in her the importance of helping others, especially those less fortunate. That afternoon, as she prepared for another online class, Sarah had no idea that her simple act of kindness would uncover a truth that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her past. The doorbell rang at 3:47 p.m. Sarah paused her studying and walked to the door, checking the peephole. Outside stood a delivery driver, clearly struggling in the oppressive heat. He was bent over slightly, one hand against the wall for support, the other holding a package. Through the door she could hear his labored breathing. The man looked to be in his early 30s, wearing a sweat-soaked uniform that clung to his thin frame. His delivery truck sat in the scorching sun without any shade. Sarah quickly opened the door, and a wave of superheated air hit her face like opening an oven. "Package for Sarah Martinez," the man said, his voice hoarse and strained. Beads of sweat dripped from his forehead, and his face was dangerously flushed. "Oh my goodness, are you okay?" Sarah asked, immediately concerned. She could see he was on the verge of heat exhaustion. I'm fine, miss," he replied, but his hands were shaking as he held out the electronic signature pad. "Just need you to sign here." Sarah quickly signed and took her package, but she couldn't bring herself to close the door. The man turned to leave, but his steps were unsteady. "Wait," she called out. "Sir, you don't look well. It's dangerous out there. When did you last have some water?" The driver paused and turned back. Up close, Sarah could see the salt stains from dried sweat on his uniform and the dark circles under his eyes. I finished my water about 2 hours ago. Been trying to find a store that's open, but everything's closed because of the heat advisory." Sarah's nursing instincts kicked in immediately. She recognized the signs of severe dehydration: the flushed skin, rapid, shallow breathing, confusion, and trembling hands. "Please come inside for just a minute," she insisted, stepping aside to let him enter. "You need water and air conditioning before you collapse." The driver hesitated. "I shouldn't. I have more deliveries." "Those deliveries won't matter if you end up in the hospital," Sarah said firmly but kindly. "I'm a nursing student. I can see you're dehydrated. Please, just 5 minutes to cool down and rehydrate." Something in her genuine concern seemed to convince him. Just for a minute," he agreed, stepping gratefully into the cool air. As soon as the driver entered her apartment, Sarah could see him physically relax as the air conditioning hit him. She quickly guided him to her couch and hurried to the kitchen. "I'm getting you water and something with electrolytes," she called out. "What's your name?" "Jake," he replied weakly, slumping back into the cushions. "Jake Thompson." Sarah returned with a large glass of ice water and a sports drink. "Drink slowly," she instructed, sitting across from him. "Too much too fast can make you sick." Jake nodded gratefully and began to sip the water. The relief on his face was immediate and visible. "How long have you been delivering in this heat?" Sarah asked, studying his condition with concern. "Since 6 a.m., Jake replied between sips. "Company says we can't stop until all packages are delivered. Heat wave or no heat wave. Bills don't pay themselves, you know." Sarah frowned. "That's inhumane. You could die out there." Jake gave a bitter laugh. "Yeah, well, life's not fair for everyone." He paused, looking around her neat, comfortable apartment. You're really kind to help a stranger like this. Most people wouldn't even open their door. My parents always taught me to treat others how I'd want to be treated, Sarah replied simply. Besides, I'm studying to be a nurse. It's my job to help people. As Jake continued to drink and cool down, color began returning to his face. Sarah found herself studying his features more closely. There was something familiar about him, though she couldn't place what it was. You said your last name is Thompson, she asked. Jake nodded, then looked at her curiously. Yeah, why? Oh, nothing. Just, you remind me of someone, but I can't think who. Sarah shook her head. Probably just my imagination. After about 15 minutes, Jake stood up, looking much better. I really should get going. Thank you so much for this. You probably saved my life. Are you sure you're feeling okay to drive? Sarah asked, still concerned. Much better, thanks to you. Jake headed toward the door, then paused and turned back. You know, in 3 years of doing this job, no one has ever invited me inside to help. Most people barely make eye contact. Sarah smiled sadly. That's terrible. Everyone deserves basic human kindness. Jake studied her face for a moment, something flickering in his eyes. You really believe that, don't you? Of course I do. You're special, Sarah Martinez. Don't let the world change that about you. With that, he opened the door to face the brutal heat again. But as he stepped outside, something made him pause and look back at the apartment number on her door. 247. His face went completely pale. Jake stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the apartment number. Sarah noticed his sudden change in demeanor. Jake, are you all right? Do you need to sit down again? But Jake wasn't listening. His eyes had moved from the apartment number to the nameplate beside the door. S. Martinez. His hands began shaking again, but this time not from dehydration. This can't be right, he whispered. What can't be right? Sarah asked, stepping closer. Jake turned to look at her again, but his expression had completely transformed. He was looking at her as if seeing her for the first time, his eyes wide with shock and something that looked like recognition. Sarah Martinez, he said slowly. 247 Sunset Apartments. Born March 15th. Sarah felt a chill despite the heat. How do you know my birthday? Jake's breathing became rapid again, but this time from shock, not heat exhaustion. Because I've been looking for you for 4 years. What are you talking about? I don't know you. No, but I know you. Jake's voice was barely a whisper. You're my sister. The words hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't yet exploded. Sarah stared at him, certain she had misheard. That's impossible. I don't have a brother. I'm an only child. Jake reached into his wallet with trembling hands and pulled out a worn photograph. Look at this. Sarah took the photo and gasped. It showed 2 young children, maybe 5 or 6 years old, playing in a backyard. The little girl looked exactly like Sarah had at that age. And the boy... That's you, she whispered, looking between the photo and Jake's face. Our parents. Our real parents. They died in a car accident when we were 6. We were put into the foster system, but we were separated. Jake's voice broke. I never stopped looking for you. Sarah felt the world spinning around her. No, that's not. My parents are Dr. Robert and Maria Martinez. They adopted me when I was a baby. They told me my birth parents died, but they never mentioned a brother, because they didn't know about me. Jake said urgently. I was older, harder to place. I bounced around different homes, but I had that photo, and I remembered you. I remembered your name was Sarah, and that we were born on the same day. Twins. Sarah stared at the photograph again. The resemblance was undeniable, and now that she looked at Jake's face without the distress of heat exhaustion clouding her judgment, she could see it. They had the same eyes, the same nose, the same stubborn chin. This is why you looked familiar, she whispered. Jake nodded. I've been searching for you for years. I knew you were adopted by a doctor named Martinez in Phoenix, but I didn't know where. When I saw the delivery address today, I thought it was just another coincidence. Sarah Martinez is a common enough name, but when you opened that door, Sarah's legs gave out, and she sank onto her couch. The room was spinning, and she felt like she might be sick. I need to call my parents, she said shakily. Dr. Robert Martinez answered on the second ring. Sarah, Is everything okay? You sound upset. Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Sarah's voice was trembling. Did I have a brother? A twin brother? The silence on the other end of the line stretched for what felt like an eternity. Sarah, where is this coming from? Just answer the question. Please. Another long pause. You need to come over. Your mother and I need to talk to you in person. Dad, just tell me. Did I have a twin brother named Jake? She heard her father's sharp intake of breath. How do you know that name? Sarah felt like the ground was falling away beneath her feet. Because he's here. He's standing in my apartment right now. That's impossible, Dr. Martinez said, his voice tight with shock. Jake is what, Dad? We'll be right over. The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone, then looked up at Jake, who had been listening to her side of the conversation with growing intensity. They're coming over, she said numbly. Jake sat down heavily beside her. They know about me, apparently. Sarah felt tears starting to form. Why didn't they tell me? All these years, why didn't they tell me I had a brother? Maybe they thought it would be too painful, Jake suggested gently. Maybe they thought it was better if you didn't know what you were missing. Sarah laughed bitterly. What I was missing. Jake, do you know what it was like growing up thinking I was alone in the world? Do you know how many times I wished for a sibling, someone who would understand me completely? Jake's own eyes filled with tears. I do know, because I lived it too, except I knew you existed, and I spent every day wondering if you were okay, if you were happy, if you even remembered me. They sat in silence for a few minutes, both trying to process the magnitude of what was happening. Sarah studied the photograph again, memories she didn't even know she had beginning to surface. I remember this backyard, she said suddenly. There was a swing set and a big oak tree with a tire swing, Jake added. You were afraid to use it at first, but you convinced me to try it. Sarah's voice was filled with wonder. I remember now. You said you'd catch me if I fell, and I did catch you, every time. The sound of hurried footsteps in the hallway interrupted their reunion. Sarah's parents had arrived. Dr. Robert Martinez and his wife Maria burst through the door, their faces pale with shock and something that looked like guilt. They stopped short when they saw Jake sitting on the couch. My God, Maria whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. It really is him. Dr. Martinez looked older than Sarah had ever seen him. Jake, you're alive. You thought I was dead? Jake asked, standing up slowly. We were told. Dr. Martinez ran a hand through his graying hair. This is not how we wanted you to find out, Sarah. Sarah stood up, anger beginning to replace her shock. Find out what, exactly? That you lied to me my entire life? We didn't lie, Maria said quickly. We didn't tell you everything. What's the difference? Sarah's voice was rising. I had a brother, a twin brother, and you never told me. Do you have any idea what that feels like? Jake stepped forward. Maybe I should go. This is a family matter. No, Sarah said firmly, grabbing his arm. Don't you dare leave. You are family. You're my family. Dr. Martinez sank into a chair, looking defeated. You have to understand, Sarah. When we adopted you, we wanted to adopt Jake too. But the state wouldn't let us take both of you. Why not? Sarah demanded. Because Jake was older and he had behavioral issues, Maria explained gently. He was acting out, having trouble adjusting to foster care. The social workers thought it would be better if you were placed separately, at least temporarily. Jake's jaw tightened. Behavioral issues. I was 6 years old and I'd just lost my parents and my sister. Of course I was acting out. We know that now, Dr. Martinez said. But at the time, we were young, inexperienced. The social workers convinced us that Sarah needed stability and that trying to take both of you might jeopardize the adoption altogether. So you chose her over me, Jake said quietly. No, that's not. Maria started to protest, then stopped. I'm sorry, Jake. That's exactly what we did, and we've regretted it every day since. Sarah felt sick. So what happened to him? We tried to stay in touch with the agency, to follow his case. We hoped that once we got settled with you, we could try to adopt Jake too. But then, Dr. Martinez's voice broke. We were told there was an accident, a fire at one of the foster homes. We were told Jake didn't make it out. Jake stared at them. What fire? I was never in any fire. The agency lied to us, Maria realized, tears streaming down her face. They must have moved you to another home and told us you were dead so we'd stop asking questions. Or maybe they just lost track of me in the system, Jake said bitterly. Happens more than you'd think. Sarah felt like her entire worldview was crumbling. So all these years, you thought he was dead? Yes, Dr. Martinez whispered. And we thought it would be too painful to tell you about a brother you could never meet. So instead, you let me grow up thinking I was alone. Sarah, we love you, Maria pleaded. We gave you the best life we could. I know you did, Sarah said, tears now flowing freely. But you also stole my brother from me, and you stole me from him. Over the next hour, Jake told them his story. After being separated from Sarah, he had indeed bounced between foster homes. Some were kind, others were neglectful or worse. He aged out of the system at 18 with no family, no support system, and no education beyond high school. I tried to find Sarah on my own, he explained. But without resources, without connections, it was almost impossible. I knew she'd been adopted by someone named Martinez, but that's a common name. I spent years following dead ends. He told them about working multiple minimum wage jobs, sleeping in his car when he couldn't afford rent, and never giving up hope that he'd find his sister someday. The delivery job was actually perfect for the search, he said with a sad smile. I got to drive all over Phoenix, see different neighborhoods, learn addresses. When I saw S. Martinez on today's delivery list, my heart skipped a beat like it always did. But I'd been disappointed so many times before. How did you find out our last name was Martinez? Dr. Martinez asked. I befriended someone who worked at the adoption agency years later. She wasn't supposed to, but she told me Sarah had been adopted by a doctor named Martinez. That's all I had to go on. Sarah wiped her eyes. All those years you were looking for me. Every single day, Jake confirmed. You were the only family I had left, even if you didn't know I existed. But I did know, Sarah said suddenly. I mean, I didn't know consciously, but I always felt like something was missing, like there was supposed to be someone else. I used to have imaginary conversations with an invisible friend who looked just like me. Jake's eyes widened. I did the same thing. I used to pretend you were there when I was scared or lonely. Maria Martinez broke down completely. We're so sorry, Jake. We thought we were protecting Sarah, but we were hurting both of you. The heat outside was still blazing, but inside Sarah's apartment, the temperature felt arctic as they all grappled with the enormity of what had been revealed. I don't know how to process this, Sarah admitted. I'm angry at Mom and Dad for not telling me, but I'm also grateful they gave me a good life. And I'm heartbroken thinking about what you went through alone, Jake. Jake shook his head. Don't feel bad for me. Yes, it was hard, but I survived. And look where it led me, right to your door. But you shouldn't have had to survive alone, Sarah insisted. We should have been together. Dr. Martinez stood up slowly. Jake, I know we have no right to ask this, but would you consider letting us be part of your life now? All of us together, as a family? Jake looked at him for a long moment. You want to be my parents now, after 26 years? We can't undo the past, Maria said quietly, but we can try to build a future, if you'll let us. I don't know, Jake said honestly. I've been on my own for so long I don't know how to be part of a family. Neither do I, Sarah said. I've never had a sibling before, but I'd like to learn if you're willing to teach me. Jake looked at his twin sister, the person he'd searched for his entire adult life. I'd like that too. Over the next few weeks, they began the delicate process of becoming a family. It wasn't easy. Jake was wary and defensive, having learned not to trust easily. The Martinezes struggled with guilt and the fear that they might lose both children if they pushed too hard. Sarah found herself caught in the middle, trying to bridge the gap between the parents who had raised her and the brother she was just getting to know. He's been hurt so badly, she confided to her mother one evening. He tries to hide it, but I can see it in his eyes. All those years alone. We want to help him, Maria said, but he won't let us. Can you blame him? You chose me over him once. Why should he trust that you won't do it again? The words stung, but Maria knew they were fair. What do? We prove it. With actions, not words. We show him every day that he matters, that he belongs. Meanwhile, Jake was having his own struggles. Living in a motel and working his delivery job, he felt like an outsider looking into the warm family life his sister had always known. "Do you ever resent me?" he asked Sarah one day when she visited him at work. "For having the life you should have had, too?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "Sometimes I wonder what our lives would have been like if we'd stayed together. But I can't resent you for something that wasn't your choice. Besides, if things had been different, you might not have become the strong, resilient person you are now." "Resilient," Jake repeated. "Is that what you call it when you're barely scraping by?" "I call it surviving against impossible odds. I call it never giving up hope of finding family. I call it heroic." Jake smiled for the first time since their reunion. "You sound like a nurse." "I am a nurse. Well, almost. And you know what? I think I know why I was drawn to this profession." "Why?" "Because somewhere deep down, I knew there was someone out there who needed healing, someone I was meant to take care of." Dr. Martinez made the first real breakthrough when he approached Jake privately one afternoon. "I know you don't trust me," he said, "and you have every right not to. But I want you to know that not a day has gone by that I haven't regretted our decision to adopt Sarah without you." Jake looked at him skeptically. "That's easy to say now." "It is," Dr. Martinez admitted. "But it's also true. Maria and we weren't ready to be parents when we adopted Sarah. We were young, scared, and we listened to the wrong people. If I could go back and change it, I would. But you can't." "No, I can't. But I can try to be the father to you now that I should have been then. If you'll let me." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "What does that look like?" "It looks like whatever you need it to look like. If you want space, we'll give you space. If you want to take things slow, we'll take things slow. But if you want to try being part of this family, we're here. Even though I'm not the successful son you probably imagined, even though I'm just a delivery driver with a high school education." Dr. Martinez's eyes filled with tears. "Jake, you survived things no child should have to survive. You never gave up looking for your sister. You work an honest job in conditions that would break most people. You are exactly the son I would be proud to have." It was the beginning of real healing. 6 months later, Jake had moved into the guest room at the Martinez house. It was a temporary arrangement while he figured out his next steps, but for the first time in 20 years, he was living with family. Sarah had graduated nursing school and was working at the same hospital where her father practiced. She made sure to visit Jake every day, slowly building the twin connection they'd been denied. "I have an idea," she told him one evening as they sat on the back porch watching the sunset. "What's that?" "I want to start a program at the hospital for kids aging out of foster care, help them get job training, maybe even college scholarships." Jake looked at her with admiration. "That's a great idea. But where did it come from?" "From you. From thinking about all the kids like you who slip through the cracks. I can't change what happened to us, but maybe we can help other kids who are going through the same thing. If you're interested. I think your perspective would be invaluable. You know what these kids are going through better than anyone." Jake was quiet for a moment. "I'm not college-educated, Sarah. I'm not sure what I could contribute." "You could contribute, the most important thing of all, hope. You could show them that no matter how hard things get, they shouldn't give up. That family is out there waiting for them, even when it seems impossible. Especially when it seems impossible." Jake smiled and took his sister's hand. "I'd like that. I'd like to help." A year later, the Phoenix Foster Youth Success Program had helped over 100 kids transition out of the system. Jake had gotten his GED and was taking classes to become a certified social worker. The program's offices were in the same building where Sarah worked as a pediatric nurse. Every day, the twins would meet for lunch, and Jake would update her on his latest cases. "There's this kid, Marcus," Jake told her one afternoon. "He's 17, about to age out. Reminds me a lot of myself at that age. Angry, defensive, convinced the world is against him. What are you going to do?" "Same thing I do with all of them. Keep showing up. Keep proving that someone cares. Eventually they start to believe it. And if they don't, Then I keep trying anyway. Because someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Sarah smiled. Mom and Dad? You. You believed I was worth saving before you even knew who I was. That's what made all the difference. Their relationship with Dr. and Maria Martinez had healed significantly over the year. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, still conversations about the lost years, but they were building something new together. You know what the strangest part is? Jake said as they walked back to work after lunch. What? If I hadn't been working that delivery route, if you hadn't been home that day, if you hadn't been kind enough to help a stranger, we might never have found each other. Sarah squeezed his arm. Maybe. Or maybe we would have found each other some other way. I think we were always meant to be together, Jake. The universe just took its time arranging the right circumstances. 2 years after their reunion, the twins were featured in a local newspaper article about their foster youth program. The story detailed their separation as children, their accidental reunion, and their work helping other kids in similar situations. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in, volunteers signed up, and most importantly, dozens of people reached out with their own stories of separated siblings. We're getting calls from all over the country, Sarah told Jake excitedly. People who lost touch with siblings in the foster system, people who were adopted and want to find their birth families, people who just want to help. Maybe we should expand the program, Jake suggested. Add a family reunification component. I was thinking the same thing. We could partner with agencies, use social media, create a database. They were building something bigger than they'd ever imagined. All because Sarah had shown kindness to an overheated delivery driver on a brutal summer day. Dr. and Maria Martinez had become active supporters of the program, both financially and emotionally. They attended every fundraiser, helped with administrative tasks, and had effectively adopted Jake as their son in all but the legal sense. I want to make it official, Dr. Martinez told Jake one evening. I know you're 28 years old and it might seem silly, but I'd like to officially adopt you, if you're willing. Jake was taken aback. You want to adopt me now? I wanted to adopt you 22 years ago. I just want to finish what we started. Jake looked at Sarah, who was beaming with joy. What do you think? I think it would make us legally brother and sister, she said. Not that we need a piece of paper to prove that, but it might be nice to have, Jake finished. Yeah, I'd like that. The adoption ceremony was small but meaningful. Judge Patricia Williams, who had handled many foster care cases over the years, was moved by their story. In 30 years on the bench, I've seen too many families torn apart by circumstance and poor decisions, she said. It gives me tremendous joy to help put one back together. As Jake signed the papers that would make him legally Jake Martinez Thompson, he'd kept Thompson as part of his name to honor his journey, Sarah couldn't stop smiling. How does it feel? She asked afterward. Strange, Jake admitted. Good strange, but strange. I've been Jake Thompson, survivor, for so long. Jake Martinez Thompson, beloved son and brother, is going to take some getting used to. You have the rest of your life to practice, Sarah said. 5 years after their reunion, the Phoenix Foster Youth Success Program had expanded to 6 states and had helped over 1,000 young people transition successfully out of foster care. The Family Reunification Program had reunited over 200 families. Jake had become a licensed social worker and was the program's director. Sarah had been promoted to head of pediatric nursing at the hospital and ran the medical support side of their program. They received letters constantly from young people whose lives had been changed by their work. But the letter that meant the most came from Marcus, the angry 17-year-old Jake had mentioned years earlier. Dear Jake and Sarah, it read, I graduate from college next month with a degree in social work. I wanted you to know that I've been accepted to the graduate program at ASU, where I plan to study family reunification. You two saved my life by showing me that family isn't just about blood. It's about people who refuse to give up on you. I hope to do for other kids what you did for me. Love, Marcus Martinez Rodriguez. Yes, I took the Martinez name too. Hope you don't mind. Sarah was crying by the time she finished reading the letter. He considers us family. We are family, Jake said. All of us. everyone who's been touched by this program. We are creating the family that society failed to give us. 10 years after the heat wave that brought them together, Jake and Sarah were honored with the Governor's Award for Distinguished Public Service. In their acceptance speech, they stood together at the podium, the resemblance between them even more pronounced as they'd aged. 10 years ago, I was a delivery driver with no family, no hope, and no future, Jake began. I was quite literally dying in the heat when my sister showed me the kind of kindness that saved my life in more ways than one. Sarah took the microphone. 10 years ago, I thought I was an only child helping a stranger. I had no idea I was saving my twin brother, the person I'd been unconsciously searching for my entire life. Our story isn't unique, Jake continued. There are thousands of children in foster care right now who have been separated from siblings, who feel alone in the world, who think no one is looking for them. But someone is, Sarah added. There's always someone who cares, someone who's searching, someone who refuses to give up. Sometimes they just need help finding each other. Our program has reunited over 500 families, Jake said. But more importantly, it's created thousands of new families, chosen families made up of people who care for each other. To every child in foster care who's listening, Sarah said, looking directly into the camera, you are not alone. You are loved. And somewhere out there, your family is looking for you. Don't give up hope. As they left the stage hand in hand, Jake reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't been desperate enough for water that day? He asked Sarah. I try not to, she replied, because this is how our story was meant to end. Together, helping others find their way back to each other. Jake squeezed her hand. Together, he agreed, the way it always should have been. Epilogue. The continuing circle. 15 years later, Jake and Sarah, now in their 40s, were attending the college graduation of their nephew, Marcus's son, who had been named Jacob, in honor of the man who had given his father hope. The Phoenix Foster Youth Success Program had become a national organization, helping thousands of young people every year. The headquarters occupied an entire building, with wings named after Dr. Robert Martinez and Maria Martinez, who had both passed away peacefully, surrounded by their children, both biological and chosen. Aunt Sarah, Uncle Jake! Young Jacob ran up to them after the ceremony, his cap askew and his grin infectious. I got into the master's program. That's wonderful, Sarah said, hugging him tightly. What's your focus going to be? Family reunification and trauma healing, Jacob replied proudly. I want to help kids like you and Dad did for Grandpa Marcus. Jake smiled, remembering the angry teenager who had become his first real success story. The circle continues. As they walked across the campus together, 3 generations of a family that had been built on kindness, hope, and the refusal to give up on each other. Sarah thought about the moment that had started it all. A simple offer of water to a stranger on a hot day had revealed the greatest truth of her life. Sometimes the people we're meant to love are hidden in plain sight, waiting for just the right moment, just the right act of kindness to reveal themselves. And sometimes saving someone else's life is the same thing as saving your own.